Hello, friends. It's Saturday on Easter weekend, and we're just walking through this Easter weekend and sharing some thoughts and some meditations on the significance of this weekend. Obviously, it's a lot to look at, and yesterday we just reflected on the essence of Good Friday and how it was such a great day because Jesus faithfully poured himself out as a sacrifice for sin. But the weekend progresses and we find ourselves in Saturday. The Bible is actually quite silent about what happened on Saturday. The gospel writers pretty much move from the crucifixion and the death straight to the resurrection on Sunday morning. And really, rightfully so, because there's not a lot to say about Saturday. Because Saturday is the day for the better part, obviously part of Friday and part of Sunday as well, where Jesus' body lied in the grave and he tasted of death. This is really the focus point, if anything, on Saturday. It's the day where Jesus drinks of the experience of death to its fullest, that his body lies there in the grave and waiting for the time where tomorrow the Spirit of God will raise him up and bring him to a new life, literally. But in that death process it's a deep reflection to think about Jesus laying in the grave. The one scripture that comes to my mind as I consider Jesus drinking of death is in John 12, verse 25. It's when these Greek people come to Andrew and Philip and they ask if they can talk to Jesus. And he makes this statement that reverses what he's said previously in John. He says, "Now the hour of the Son of Man has come." And he's saying that now is the time for me to turn my sight toward Jerusalem and to go to the cross and to die, to do everything that's necessary. Everything's been leading up to this time. And Jesus makes this statement. I love this verse. He says, "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it brings forth much fruit." And I believe this was a prophetic statement of Jesus, knowing that he was going to die. But he knew that if he would die, similar to that seed that we plant in the ground, that seed has to go through a death process. We call that in the natural germination, where that seed undergoes decay and where it opens up, and through the external sources of heat and water and pressure, the seed breaks forth so that the life can come out of it and ultimately grow into a plant that will bear much more fruit. One of the little illustrations I love to use teaching about the seed and the fruit that comes forth is, you can take an apple and you can cut open an apple and you can count the number of seeds in that apple, maybe 6, 7, 8 seeds. But only God can take an apple seed and count the number of apples in that seed. And I love that illustration because Jesus knew that if his life would be planted in death, and we know, according to the scripture, that he did not undergo decay. He wasn't in the grave long enough to experience decay. David prophesied that in the psalm. But we know that God raised him on Sunday. But in that process of tasting of death, Jesus knew that a new life was going to come forth, a life that could be multiplied and exponentially increased into the lives of many who would become sons and daughters of God. So today, as we reflect on the death process of Jesus, let's just thank God that Jesus was willing to go to the grave. He was willing to be planted as a seed that was going to bear much fruit. So I pray that this thought blesses you on this Easter Saturday.